Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the Object 416 Tier 8 Russian medium tank, currently on the on-track op towards the Object 430U. Some quite mixed feelings about this tank, I'll go through in time. Before we get onto that though, many of my regular viewers will know I haven't really posted in a while. Number of different reasons for this. Part of it is just general kind of work-life balance, being quite busy. The other thing that's affected it quite a bit is the recent update that we had around Christmas time. Just completely horrendous. Really have never seen anything so awful in my life coming as an update. And it has really meant that I've considerably scaled back the time and money that I've been putting into this game, and it's just kind of taken away a bit of the motivation to really do reviews until they've got things sorted out. And credit where credit's due, they've fixed a lot of their issues with the game. When they say it is playable, it is now in fact actually playable, but there are still a lot of problems left. Things like the tech tree, the garage. I mean, what is up with the garage? But also the fact that the absolute lack of communication and complete unwillingness to apologise on the part of Wargaming for things just ruining people's gaming experience, but also the amount of things that went missing off of people's accounts and the amount of just misery that they've caused people. It's really quite unforgivable. But that said, things do seem to be on the way up, and so I have started playing a little bit more now, just trying to get back into it and get used to it. So, although it has been a long time since my last video went live, I really do appreciate all of the comments that I've been getting over that period on my videos that are already up, questions, and suggestions for things to do next. I really do appreciate it, and I have been paying attention to them all, keeping a log, and we'll be getting on to some of them soon. Hope it's now I can start putting some videos together a little bit more frequently. I probably wouldn't go as far as to promise weekly, but certainly a lot more regularly than previously. And so, as always, suggestions for future reviews, things you'd like me to talk about in the comments below would be much appreciated. So without much further ado, let's jump into the Object 416. So the Object 416 is probably one of the rarer tanks in the game. Could be a number of reasons for this. Part could be that the Object 430U is less popular as an end goal, and so people don't go up this track very often. But part of me suspects that the A44, which is the tank before this one, is so horrendous that it scares a lot of people off. Whichever that is, the Object 416 was in fact a direct descendant of the A44 prototype in real life. It was designed in the early 1950s as a light tank, later switched to a self-propelled gun, but ultimately it was never produced, even though it passed trials. So moving on to its characteristics, have a top speed of 50 km an hour, engine-wise, which is pretty good for medium. It's comparable with other Tier 8 Russian mediums, and the power-to-rate ratio on this is actually pretty good, so you really do notice how nippy it is. I've currently not got this very far upgraded, so I've only got the stock 100mm gun, but it is pretty good, comparable to that on the Motherland. One thing that is above average though is the whole rotation speed, which is at 52 degrees a second, is much better than something like the Motherland, or even something quite similar like the Guardian STG, and it does let you really duck in and out of cover quite quickly. The turret itself is weak, very little armour. Rotation speed is pretty good at 40 degrees, but it's important to note that the turret only goes 70 degrees to either side. Your radio range is pretty standard at 730. In terms of your ammunition, you've only got 175mm of pen, which is below average, so you will be using premium quite a lot. Be wary that the ammo rack is quite easy to hit at the back of the turret. And all of your crew are in the turret, which is super easy to pen, so beware, they will get taken out a lot. In terms of armour, there's very little to speak of. 20 mils on the turret top, hull top and tracks, so very susceptible to splash damage. Your gun comes in at 40 mils. You do get 45 on the sides and rear, so no side scraping here. You get a slight increase to 60 on the lower plate and on the sides of the turret. They may look quite well angled, but I've still found that they're quite easy to pen, and actually the same goes for the front sides of the turret and the front glacis plate too. Even when it goes up to 110, I think, on the around the gun mantle on the very front of the turret, it is still easy to penetrate for other tier 8s and above, keeping in mind that it sees up to tier 10, so you really can't be hitting this. So one thing that I forgot to mention on this is that the camo comes in at 0.42 when stationary, which is actually well above average. I think the norm is about 0.32. So playing as a passive sniper using a speed to get in position is one viable strategy for this. The way I found works better though is to use the speed to move between your allies and take pot shots at the enemy using the reasonably good gun. So in terms of crew, what did I go for? Pretty standard medium build, 6 cents, extra view range, and buffs to accuracy as well, and the reload speed, just to get that gun handling up and make it work as you zigzag in and out of your allies to really rack up that DPM. But I suppose if you wanted to go down the passive scout line, you could take a build for camo on here, which would work quite well, and play it a bit more like a pseudo light tank. So that's probably more than enough on the garage stats for this thing. The best way to let you see whether this is the line for you is probably to jump into some gameplay. So I think we're loading in on Kaunas here, which is a map that normally I don't do quite so well on, actually. But it seems to strangely suit this tank and the kind of playstyle that you need to take up, as you'll see soon. So we're loading in at the town at the bottom now. Quite lucky matchmaking, top tier. I haven't seen very much of it this weekend. And a little bit of poor driving on my part, ramming into the IS-3. But you can see straight away your speed and acceleration is pretty good, pretty nippy. You're keeping up with some of the light tanks here on the team. I decided I was going to go for the ridge up the one line and see if I could start off acting as a bit of a passive scout, and then try to play a bit more aggressively as my allies catch up to me. And I think that's probably the best strategy for using this tank, to try and hang back in the spot, use that good camo to begin with, and then use the speed and nimbleness of this tank to kind of weave in and out of your allies later on and rack up the damage. The one thing to note is, whilst that camo stationary is pretty good, it's much more average when you're moving. And so you can see I've been spotted here by their lights. Obviously the other thing to keep in mind when you're playing this tank is that because of that really poor gun depression, it's -3 degrees, you can't really use terrain like this. You must try to avoid that temptation to try and take pot shots and snipe. Really, you just want to do the spotting and then move out of the way as soon as you've been spotted. So I'm not really quite sure what my thinking was at this point. I was trying to wait for my allies to kind of catch up and push forward so I could go and support them. But everybody has obviously decided to snipe at the rich targets available, and it's something that unfortunately I can't join in on at this point with my gun depression. But fear not, opportunity will come up because the enemy is pushing the top of the ridge, giving me the chance to do what this tank does reasonably well, which is support. So here we go. You can see you can use that speed to weave in and out really quickly, pop a shot off, get back into cover before the enemy can really respond. And having allies around you to distract the enemy as well is a big thing. And I would say the gun on this actually stands up quite well. It's quite accurate on the move. I think it's actually had a buff recently from 0.39 down to 0.35, which is one of the more accurate Russian medium tank guns. And as you can see, we're easily going through this Indian Panzer and Big Top. And again, do keep in mind that I'm using a stock gun at the moment, so it should get better when I get to the final package. And something that I didn't mention in the garage actually is the equipment that I've gone for on this. But I think it would have been coated optics to get that view range up, and it would have been the vertical stabilisers, although I'm not sure they're called that anymore, to get the accuracy up on the move. And then I think for the final upgrade it probably would have been aiming speed, if I remember correctly. So, a nice hit there on the VK. Can I hit the atomic? Yes, I can. And this is where you can switch roles a bit in this tank actually. When you're on the flat, you can use the gun to snipe. It is a bit more reliable for that. But you can also, if you get situations like this where you've got a clear run and you know you can get into cover, and you can use your camo when you're then in cover to keep you hidden, you can kind of use it as quite a good scout for your team. But crucially, you're not an active scout. Your camo on the move is just not good enough, and also you can't pick up like good ridge lines like you could with more active scouts, like I don't know, the Holland, for example, where you could use that gun depression to snipe away at people. With this, you've always got to be just a little bit in front of your allies fighting for them, so that if you need to, you can fall back in amongst them and use them as cover, because that's the only way you can really make this terrible gun depression and lack of armour work. But what you do have in huge amounts is speed and agility, and so you can really take advantage of developing situations on the map. For example, this tank destroyer getting cornered by both sides, being able to move in a flank like that. And of course it is quite helpful as well when you get to the end of the map situations and you're looking to do a little rush on artillery. Not only can you get to them pretty quick, but you've got a respectable amount of damage to take them down, and also that agility to be able to weave back and forth quite quick. I found is pretty good for goading artillery to take pot shots at you and then to dodge that. It's an extra little advantage that it does have. I mean, you got to give it. It's not got many other advantages going for it. So we're almost done now. So I think a quick wrap up of the pros and cons of this tank. It's got a lot of negatives. It's got very limited turret traverse, very poor armour. So it really does not play like many other tanks that I know. But on the plus side, it does have a huge amount of speed and agility on its side. And so if you're good at reading the map, I guess you can make this work. But personally, it's not a favourite of mine, and I'll be quite glad to see the back of it. So, that's pretty much all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed this video, hope it's been useful for you. Look forward to getting one up again soon. But in the meantime, do let me know if you have any tanks you would like to see reviewed, or things you'd like to see me talk about. Coffee Guy out.